You just mentioned luck. Some of it is luck, and some of it is definitely the people that you know.
Okay.
And when you do this business for as long as I have, you meet people.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people that I met along the way got me into the door with some other places, including the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. They were opening a new stadium in 2017, which also houses Atlanta United.
Yep.
And the Gwinnett Stripers, they were at the Gwinnett Braves at the time.
Okay.
The Gwinnett Braves Stadium was home to the Atlanta United's second soccer team.
Okay.
So we hosted them for one season. I called those games. And the Atlanta United staff came and assisted us in putting those shows on for the first couple. And so the Atlanta United staff heard me call the games and said, we'd like to bring you on as because the Falcons and United had their own announcer, but they said they'd like to bring me on as a backup person.
Wow. Okay.
So they brought me down to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and hired me on as a backup announcer. And every once in a while, I mean, I've done one Falcons game because the regular person needed a day off.
Okay.
And then I've done a few United games as well because the regular person needed a day off. So,
Sure.
And also one Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl as well.
Oh, that's
because regular person needed a day off. So I've done a lot of cool gigs at a world-class stadium in Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Wow.
I really can't say enough about it. It's just awesome.
Kevin, I'm super pumped for this, man. You've been so kind along the way, and we've attempted to get this thing done, and now we're here. I'm going to share a little background story in about 10 seconds, but I grew up watching the Atlanta Braves on TBS here in Vegas.
Yes.
And so
in the 90s?
90s, yeah, 90s and early 2000s. I was a baseball player, and it occupied almost all my life until college. And so we had two choices. We had the Atlanta Braves and we had the Chicago Cubs on WGN, and I just gravitated towards the Braves. And so
right choice.
Yeah, of course. Dude, Freddie McGriff and Justice and Andrew Jones back when he was just coming up, man, those Maddox, Glavine. I mean, I just got those days dialed in. But to have a true Atlanta Brave now right there, dude, it's exciting. I'm going to have some fun with this one. Totally.
I'm looking forward to it.
And we're rolling, by the way. So this is it, man. We're just launching into the conversation. Yeah, we're good.
Oh, what's up, everybody? thanks for the warning.
That makes it more natural. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. All the names you just rattled off, that's my childhood right there. Yeah, I grew up with Skip and Pete, listening to Skip and Pete call the games, and all the players that I grew up loving. My favorite player growing up was John Smoltz. So
Yep. How incredible.
And
Smoltz could throw a nasty pitch. I tell you, his stuff was just dirty, whether fastball, it's off-speed stuff. Holy moly.
Yeah, when he became a closer, he definitely. I don't think I remember him having he had a really good slider, but when he was a starter, I don't remember him having as good of a slider. But or a curveball.
Yep.
But when he became closer, man, he was nails.
That's unbelievable. He was lights out.
Yeah,
lights out.
Exactly.
You have listen. I was getting inspired by stories and journeys. And Kevin, obviously, you've been on one in the baseball world, and now you are the public address announcer for the Atlanta Braves. And how cool is that? But it starts somewhere.
I still can't believe I'm doing it, to be honest. I've met a few people that do PA for Major League Baseball teams since I became the PA announcer back in March, and they all enjoy it. Like, of course. It's a great job, but not everyone is a PA man for a team they grew up, rooting for and have lived in the city their entire life. And so to have the opportunity to get paid to sit and watch Braves baseball, the team that I grew up, loving, it's still pretty surreal. I still can't believe I'm doing it. Got to pinch myself every day I walk into the office.
That's incredible. Yeah, the office is pretty good too, right? The big stadium.
It's pretty nice. Yeah.
Talk about an upgrade, right?
I posted some pictures on social media about the view from the office. We've done some decorating in the booth. We've got bunches of bobbleheads all over the place.
That's fantastic.
Posters and things like that. So
I
like to think that our decorating skills in our booth is why we're 30 games over 500 right now. So
having a good season. That's always a bonus, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
exactly.
listen, they can give you all the credit, right? Now you can say it's because they brought in that new PA announcer, Kevin. That's why we're doing so well. We win the World Series.
No,
Pay that man.
if only it were that simple, right?
Right.
But the other side of that is if and or because baseball goes in ups and downs. So I hope they don't feel that way, because the next time we have a not so good season, and it's going to come at some point, we just don't know when.
Sure.
Hopefully they don't. Oh, let's get a new PA announcer in here, and then we'll have another 100-win season. So
absolutely.
But yeah, we're definitely having a great year. It's been a heck of a first season for sure.
Cool. Well, let's go back into your childhood, man. I want to understand, where you come from in Atlanta and what kind of sent you on that trajectory to get into baseball. Were you a baseball player? Were you a baseball fan only? I'm sure you grew up going to games, but I want to start to understand more about Kevin, right? And the trajectory that sent you down the path to getting into the booth. Was it a decision you made early that you wanted to be a PA announcer, or did you want to be a player and then by virtue it just shifted on you? So I'm extremely curious on how that all unfolded for you, my friend.
You threw a lot of stuff at me all at the same time there.
That's the fastball, that's the curveball, and the changeup all at the same time. Try to hit them.
I'm going to take 3 swings. We'll start. Well, everyone that loves baseball, they want to be a player first and foremost. Of course, I played baseball growing up, just like a lot of young boys. It became pretty clear pretty early on that I was I was never going to be past high school. I think I stopped playing ball, I think, in 9th or 10th grade. It was just clear at that time that there was no real future there, there's nothing wrong with that. I always loved to play. I just wasn't very good. I was really good when I was hitting off the tee, like when the ball was just sitting there on a tee. Mm-hmm. But after we got to live pitchers, I just couldn't hit the ball, consistently. So, and as far as getting into the booth and announcing, that's also never really occurred to me, at least until about 10 years ago when I first started my first baseball job. I actually wanted to be a meteorologist.
Wow.
So that's what I went to school for.
Okay.
That was actually my passion for being a young kid as well. I was fascinated by the weather, and I loved watching the Weather Channel for hours on end, especially during hurricane season. Mm-hmm. That's what I like to do. That's what I went to school to be, was a meteorologist. But what they don't tell you when you go to school for that is there's not a lot of jobs in meteorology nationwide, unless you want to work for the government.
Okay.
There's lots of government jobs, but there's really no opportunity for growth there. So that's not something I really wanted to do. So when I graduated college, I spent a lot of time, sending demo reels of myself all over the country to TV stations and radio stations, and hoping that someone would take a chance on hiring me. And I never heard back one time. Wow. Not once.
Okay.
So that was kind of discouraging. So I was kind of in a dark place 10, 11 years ago. So I was trying to find things to do to pass the time while I was waiting for answers. So I wanted to get some practice on a microphone, because, that's what I was going to be doing at the time. I thought I was going to be on TV or on the radio. So I wanted to get a job, practicing in front of a microphone. So I actually became a local trivia host for a local entertainment company. And that's actually something I still do today. I still do a couple of gigs a week, hosting trivia, bingo, karaoke, things like that. I've done a few weddings from time to time. Mm-hmm. So that was good to get in front of a microphone and talk in front of people. Because actually, believe it or not, I'm a pretty big introvert.
Okay. Wow.
Unless I'm in front of a microphone.
Sure. Sure.
Just something gets me out of my shell when I'm talking in front of a microphone. So that's one thing I did while I passed the time. Another thing I did was I still love sports. Mm-hmm. So I applied for a position with a local minor league team to be their DJ, to play music during their games. Okay. And during the interview, the person that hired me, Andrea, know Andrea. Andrea listened to me talk during the interview and said, we had PA announcers at this time and date. You're coming to the tryouts. So it wasn't a question. It was you are coming. So I went up against 30 guys. So I read the starting lineup and some scripts to a blank canvas. They had two people sitting behind a canvas, and so they could hear you without seeing you. And they picked me, and then the rest is history from there.
Wow. So almost by accident, you were
just
attempting
totally
to go a different route. And it'd be safe to say somebody saw something in you and say, hey, why don't you give this a shot?
Mm-hmm. And to be absolutely fair to myself, I actually did do some PA announcing in college, but it was for, I think my very first gig ever was a women's soccer match at the small little school that I started out going to college at. And I think there were maybe 50 people in attendance for that game.
Right.
So it wasn't something that when I did that, I said, you know what, in about 11, 12 years, this is what I'll be doing as a side gig, doing Major League Baseball. This was something to pay for a meal that night because they fed you and they gave you, I think it was $20 seriously to do the game. So it was to get food. As a college kid, of course, you want a free meal and then a little bit of spending money. So that's what I did it for.
That's incredible.
And then I did other sports as well in college. I did a few softball games. A few basketball games, but again, nothing huge. And I totally planned on not doing it again after I graduated. I was focusing on getting a meteorology job.
Yeah. Wow. So a couple things. I'm going to go there. I want to go into the booth with you and understand like what it's really like, what happens, what do you have to do when you get to the office? What's the prep like, right? Because you always see it from a distance and I'm intrigued, if I'm watching Troy Aikman on Fox, in the booth calling the game, I'm like, what's he doing in the middle? How's he getting there? I'm just wondering. I don't know everything, obviously. And
it's funny that you say that. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't want to.
No, please, man. You jump in whenever. We're just having fun here, man. I don't have a record of, making sure that these things are right or wrong. We're just enjoying it. Yeah, man. Let's have some fun.
I was going to say, it's funny that you mentioned Troy Aikman because he does TV. And actually when I tell people that I'm a public address announcer, they automatically think that I'm doing games on TV.
Right.
For folks. And I said, no, this is when you go to the game. I'm the voice of God that you hear.
Yeah. Which is amazing.
Advertisements. So it's funny that you say that. I know that you know what I do.
Correct.
Yeah. But half the time people think, oh, so you're on TV, so I can turn it on TV and hear you. And you can, if you turn on a Braves game, you can hear me, but it's in the background. It's not clear like Brandon and Jeff are when they do the Braves broadcasts. But as far as the prep goes, getting back to your original question, so we have a staff meeting 2-3 hours before the game. You get your script at that time. The good thing about the script is when you're doing 81 home games, 85% of the script is the same every single time. Wow. So once you do the first 3 or 4 games, it's like doing every single game. I've literally memorized just about every advertisement that there is to read during a normal Braves game, which is, I could just read it. But the lineups are the thing that you have to prepare for. Especially if a team is coming to town that you haven't seen in a while, or if they have a lot of players that you haven't heard of. You definitely want to make sure you consult. We have the good thing about being in the majors is they have a very extensive pronunciation guide for you. So I've got a database of every single major league team at my disposal, and they have every single pronunciation for every single player in every organization on their team.
Wow. Yeah, because you're responsible for announcing that batter coming up, even if they're not a Brave. And so let me ask you, is there an expectation that you have to nail that name? And if you don't, are you, again, like I think of a job, right? It's like if you do something wrong, you're in trouble. Are you held to a standard where you have to meet that expectation to announce that player's name properly?
At the highest level, absolutely, you'll hear something. It's only happened to me once this year. To be fair, absolutely fair to me again, I think that I said the name right the first time, but the person people are listening to you. So
Mm-hmm.
if they think that you didn't say it right, they definitely reach out to the appropriate person, and that person lets me know. It's like, by the way, it's blah blah blah,
Sure.
not blah blah blah.
Okay.
It's sometimes it's not just pronunciation, but the inflection and how you say it. Like people want their name said a certain way.
Absolutely.
And so that one particular time, as I said, I thought I said the name the right way the first time, but that person thought they heard differently. So it's still, I said, thank you very much. I'll make sure I say it, right the next time. And I did. And then I didn't hear the rest of the series because that was the first game of the 3-game series.
Right.
So I answered your question, P. Yes, people are listening, especially at that level. And if they don't think you said it right, they definitely let you know.
So talk about the script a little bit, because if it's advertisements, makes sense. From a script, like I think script, I always think I've got a background in a lot of communication and sales, right? So it's like a sales script. There's scripts for actors and actresses where they've got to, really follow those and get lines down. For you, when you say advertisement, I get that part, but so the other parts, scripting wise, is that other language that you're responsible for utilizing during the game itself? Like, I'm curious. I just don't know. So now, would you elaborate on that a little bit so we can understand that?
Well, usually it's just as far as in-game goes, it's like a company is sponsoring like a half inning. So, for example, we have a racetrack home run inning for every Braves game.
Okay.
And if a Braves player hits a home run during that half inning, then every single person in attendance gets. I think the advertisement is everyone in attendance with a ticket gets $5 off food and beverage the next day at racetrack.
Right. Okay.
So you're reading the same one over like 81 times. I think what you're saying is like, do I have to read it a certain way, like a salesperson does on the radio?
Right.
I mean, you don't have to. I mean, you could read it monotone if you want, but that's not my style.
Okay.
Especially if you're reading it 81 times, it gets a little boring after the first 20.
Sure.
So I like to change, read it a little bit different each night because, it's for myself as well as for the fans, especially season ticket holders that hear the same thing over and over as well.
Yeah.
You want to make it a little bit interesting.
Yeah.
So that people don't the idea is to get people to listen to you.
Okay.
Because racetrack would like you not to be boring when you read it. So.
Sure, of course. Yeah. You're representing that moment of their brand, and it has to be enticing and encouraging and uplifting, I would imagine. That's neat.
Yeah.
All right, man. So let me ask you this, because I did a little digging and I found out that you had beat out 500 other people for this job, and
500 other people,
and that there was like a selection, like the fan vote was one part of like an 8-vote selection process. Is that what I'm understanding correctly?
It was actually a very, very good idea by the Braves. They made it just like American Idol,
okay,
which is really funny because growing up, American Idol was at its heyday. When I was in high school.
Sure.
And so, but I never got into American Idol. In fact, I made fun of the show, who watches this? It's just a popularity contest. And going through that experience a few months ago, I definitely have an appreciation for anyone that's gone on American Idol as a contestant, because that was stressful.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. But
yes, you are right. They start with 500, so everyone sent in their demo reels. The Braves posted like a lineup and a few blurbs that you read, and you send them in. And then if they liked you, they got back to you. And then they interviewed you. And then if you passed the interview process, they made it down to the final 12. So I don't know if you saw, you said you did some digging. I don't know if you saw the video the Braves posted of the final 12.
I did see
so
that
they brought all 12 into the stadium, and they sat you in the booth, and they recorded you doing more stuff, like you were announcing the game.
Okay.
And then they posted all 12 on their social media pages and say, hey, by the way, these are our final 12, and we're going to make the cuts to final 3. And then when we make the cuts of the final 3, we're going to let you guys vote on which of the 3 you like best. And so the fan vote was one of the 8 votes that made the decision on who the next P announcer was going to be.
So what's going on in your head this entire process? Are you thinking to yourself, and I'm honestly, I want the truth. Are you convinced you're going to win this? Are you thinking this is a gamble or a lottery? Do you have that conviction that you're the next Braves PA announcer? Because if you were with Gwinnett for a while too, which was obviously, and I think this probably has a lot to help with. I mean, the fact that you're Atlanta born, man, I mean, that's a big deal, right? Yeah. So you probably knew that you had an edge there, right? A lot of others were probably coming from somewhere else, and so they weren't representing the ether and the ethos of the Atlanta Braves. But what's going on in your head while this is all happening, and how are you taking that and approaching it?
I was confident, yes. Okay. For that audition that I mentioned when they brought the final 12 in, and when I did the audition for that, I definitely felt like I couldn't have done it any better. So awesome. I said, well, if I'm not picked after doing that, then it was never meant to be, because I definitely felt like I could not do it any better than how I did it. Mm-hmm. So that made me feel good inside. Good. Because if I had gone there and I had, tripped over a word or something or stuttered, then I would have had some regrets. Sure. I could have done it better. Right. But I didn't. I felt like I did it as perfectly as I could. So that helped a lot. The fan vote thing, I'm sure if you did some digging, you know that I did not do well in the fan vote. The other two that they had me against were also very talented. And if the Braves had chosen either of the two of them, they would have made a great choice as well. Mm-hmm. But the fan vote, I try not to let that bother me, because again, this at the end of the day, this was a career decision, and I really did think that the Braves never truly would have made the decision on someone's career based solely on the fan vote. They said from the start that the fans had one vote. It's just that the fan vote wasn't for me. Sure. So when the fan vote came out so poorly for me, I made it a goal for myself this season that I was going to win over the fans. Wow. And that was my goal for every single game, is to go to every game and to have every fan leave that game thinking to themselves that they really enjoyed what they heard, as well as what they saw on the field, obviously. Yeah. So that was my goal for this season, is to win over the fans. And I've asked for feedback this year, and I've heard nothing but good things. So at least incredible. So far, my goal is going well.
Good for you to take that and turn it around and make it a victory in the face of what seemingly could have been not even a defeat as defeated, but that micro defeat there. That's fantastic. Yeah. So give me an idea about how do you take on that then, of making sure the fan changes their perception of you in that process? So do you show up and, I know you mentioned earlier you have to say the names right. So how do you go to the fan in your head, Kevin, as far as basically employing them to really take a liking to you now in this process? How do you do that? Like, what is the actual approach to getting them to become your fans? Like, because I would think it was just natural that would happen. Wouldn't it be like, you're the announcer, so automatically they should like you because damn, you're part of the organization and you're the guy. You're the one that's calling all the Braves out and bringing them up to bat.
Well, I mentioned before that while every single PA announcer that I've ever met is very good, very talented, including some of the ones that I've met at the major league level, I didn't get the sense from all of them that they were true fans of that team. I mean, they I'm sure they, since they're employed by them, that they would turn into fans. Sure. I'm not saying I'm sure that every announcer is an actual fan of the team. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is not every PA announcer grew up as a fan and has been a lifelong fan. So my goal for getting the fans on my side for this year is to let my personality, let my fandom bleed through the microphone. If they can tell that I'm a Braves fan just like them, then I think that's the biggest thing that would get them on my side, is that they can see that I'm a Braves fan just like them. And I told them so. I made a social media post shortly after they announced that I had gotten the job,
Mm-hmm.
and I let them know that I'm a fan just like you, and I'm going to do my best to make Truist Park as much of a home field advantage as I can, as I'm allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've done that this year. And I joked earlier. I said I'm the why we're 30 games over 500. That's obviously not true.
I love it.
But if the fans feel that might be one of the reasons why,
Yep.
because I make Truist Park such a good home atmosphere, then that's all I can ask for is the fans' perception of me after they leave the game is that, gosh, that announced like I felt like the guy announcing the batters was just like me.
Yep.
Just like me, a big fan.
I have the chills, man. Like the fact that you said that you wanted them to feel that you were a big fan of the biggest fan, just like they are, one, and then growing through that electrifies me. It's almost like storyboard movie type stuff, you know. In 10 years they make the movie on that year where this guy Kevin came in and he was the PA announcer and the team did amazing, and they're like, what was that special feeling? What was that thing? And then it all goes back to you, and then they go out and create this epic story about it. That's fun, man. That's fun. So what happens when you find out you get the job? What do you do right there? Are you the little kid bouncing around, jumping up, or are you calm and cool and like just acknowledging it, or are you just got the call from the NFL draft or the MLB draft and you're freaking out, families everywhere, it's one of those types of things? What was it like?
Well, I actually found out at work. I don't know if I'm sure you have if you dug the Braves recorded me finding out that I got the job, and they released that video. They had their radio play-by-play man give me a Zoom call, and the Braves were very vague on why they needed to talk to me again.
Mm-hmm.
They told me they needed to go over a couple more things. They wanted me to read some more things, which I was about beside myself. I've read paragraphs upon paragraphs of things and announced lineups beyond lineups for this team. What else could they? What else more could I read for them? But they wanted to talk in the middle of my workday. So I'm at the office, and I snuck into a meeting room. For the Zoom call, and then they let me know they brought in one of our starting pitchers, who announced me as the PA announcer for the Braves, and they congratulated me and they recorded my reaction. So, but I couldn't. I wanted to yell out loud and scream and celebrate, but I couldn't. I'm in the middle of a professional atmosphere, so I shed a few tears. I had to do it silently like this.
That's incredible, man.
And then I had to play it cool the rest of the day at the office because they obviously they also told me 3 days before they were going to release the video and tell the public.
Oh, okay, so they hadn't announced it yet.
Yeah, they swore me to secrecy. I could tell my fiance, now my wife, and my parents, and that's all I was allowed to tell.
Wow.
But the three of us, my wife and I and my parents, we celebrated together privately. But inside, yes, it's just how you said. I wanted to jump up down, celebrate.
Oh,
this was
years.
It's been including announcing college 15 years to get to this point. I think 15 years.
By the way, what a great testament to what it takes to get to the pinnacle, right? I think this is a very big lesson in life and success of everybody thinks it's overnight and it's luck. And you're over here, of course, objecting to that and saying, no, I've been working this thing for 15 years. I've been doing it in probably what started off as the smallest environments. And then I read that you also in some cases were actually doing stuff for the Falcons and the United too. Is that right? How did that come and fit into the mix?
You just mentioned luck. Some of it is luck, and some of it is definitely the people that you know. Okay. And when you do this business for as long as I have, you meet people. Mm-hmm. And so some people that I met along the way got me into the door with some other places, including the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. They were opening a new stadium in 2017, which also houses Atlanta United. Yep. And the Gwinnett Stripers, they were at the Gwinnett Braves at the time. Okay. The Gwinnett Braves Stadium was home to the Atlanta United's second soccer team.
Okay.
So we hosted them for one season. I called those games, and the Atlanta United staff came and assisted us in putting those shows on for the first couple. And so the Atlanta United staff heard me call the games and said, we'd like to bring you on as a because the Falcons and United had their own announcer, but they said they'd like to bring me on as a backup person.
Wow. Okay.
So they brought me down to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and hired me on as a backup announcer. And every once in a while, I mean, I've done one Falcons game because the regular person needed a day off.
Okay.
And then I've done a few United games as well because the regular person needed a day off. So,
sure.
And also one Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl as well.
Oh, that's
because
cool.
regular person needed a day off. So I've done a lot of cool gigs at a world-class stadium in Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Wow.
I really can't say enough about it. It's just awesome.
So what's the difference between calling a football game and a baseball game? Were there big differences? Were there extra stressors? What's the? It seems, I mean, golly, much more fast paced than football, right? Like you're or no? Is actually, man, that might not be true. I guess I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Other way around.
Other way around. Okay.
Much more fast paced in football.
Okay.
It's a lot more stressful.
Yeah.
Because you're talking a lot more. You announce every single play, like who caught the ball, who ran the ball, who made the tackle, how many yards gained, and then the next down. But the good thing about that is you don't do it all on your own. You have a spotter that sits next to you, and he tells you who carried the ball, who made the tackle. So he said 12 carry, 24 tackle. So then you have your roster card next to you. So you just pick out the number and read the name.
Okay.
Go on to the next play. But I've gone to football games my entire life too. I'm a Georgia Bulldogs fan and alum, so I've gone to Georgia games, my entire life. So I was familiar with the cadence of how to call a football game. So I just translated that.
Okay.
I just translated that. My very first football game at the professional level ever was calling a Falcons game.
Wow.
So, but I got nothing but good feedback for doing that. So I guess I lucked out, but I was really doing that by the seat of my pants. That Falcons game, it was totally mind blowing, but also so much fun at the same time.
And do you get prepped for that too? Are you called like a week before and like, hey, first in charge is out for the day? Are you ready? It
really was about a week.
Wow.
Yeah, it was about a week. It was one of those things that he needed pretty suddenly a day off.
Yeah.
So they gave me about a week heads up. So I knew the Falcons were playing that day. I think we were playing the Lions. Mm-hmm. So I just did a little research ahead of time who the Lions players were. As a Falcons fan, I knew who most of our players were, so that wasn't a problem. But I just did a little bit of research on the Lions, and then printed out my roster cards. And as far as the script goes, it's just like calling a baseball game. You got your advertisements.
Sure.
You got your starting lineups. You got your national anthem announcement. It's just like doing a baseball game, just a different sport.
Right. So, all right, I'm all ears. I'm going to keep you here for a couple of days, man, and ask all these questions like a kid in the candy store. So, when you go into the booth on the daily, I guess the question is, what are you qualifying as skills in this type of position, right? Obviously, you've got to have a great voice, I think. Obviously, you've got to be sharp mentally. You've got to have some sports knowledge. But is there a grading of skill sets that lend to being a great public address announcer and on top of the game as you are that are developable? Or how does that work? Like, what is being graded to be good at what you do? How do you become a badass at being a professional public address announcer?
Probably the biggest thing is coming out of your shell. As I mentioned, I'm a big introvert. What you really classically call an extroverted introvert.
Okay.
So you got to be comfortable being in front of people. For one, you got to get out of that. You got to get over that. Which I did after a while. Yeah. And then you have to be able to be understood on the microphone, because me talking to you face to face is different than talking into a microphone and then people hearing you through the microphone. You have to be able to dictate, enunciate.
Yep.
That's probably the biggest challenge, because I do struggle time to time, as you can tell, when I'm not reading off a script, with stuttering, muttering, things like that.
Yeah, but it's authentic.
So when you're,
it's authentic though,
yeah,
man. Like I respect it. I'm going to unpack that a little bit when you're done. I don't mean to cut you off, but like I think there's this, and I'm sorry, and I'm going to carry this thought for a second, but it's important. You're a moving, living example of, I think, what a lot of people struggle with, which is feeling introverted or unable to express themselves or leaning on that the fact that they stutter or mix some words up. But dude, you're an ultimate inspiration because you're you're on the biggest stage in the biggest booth with those qualities. Like how incredible is that? That blows my mind. Right? So
it's still pretty incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which exactly how you said it. Any kind of personality, as long as you work on your craft, can be in the booth, even if you're an introvert. The good thing about doing PA work is, especially if you're an introvert, is that when you're doing a sports game, people really aren't looking at you. You're sitting in a box. People aren't looking at you. They're looking at the field, and you just get to talk about the field. So it really is being the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
You get to be with people, but people aren't looking out at you. So if you're an introvert and this is something you think you might want to do, and you're kind of daunted by the fact that I'm going to be speaking to, when I did the Falcons, I think there were 70,000 in attendance, speaking to 70,000 people, to be rest assured that, really there's only like 3 people looking at you. Yeah. Your producer who's sitting right next to you, maybe the DJ who's waiting you to stop talking so that they can play more music, and maybe one other person that are looking at you. Everyone else is not paying you any attention with sight anyway. They're just listening to you with ears.
Yeah.
So if that's something that's daunting you, it can be done.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And you bring a fantastic point that I have talked about at great lengths before. A former coach of mine and great lady, pseudo mentor, mentioned this thing called code switching. And I explored that some more, and then I kind of evolved it into knowing your role. And what I meant by that was, I'm going to be different in different environments. Like I get people like, always be the same person. I'm like, that doesn't make any damn sense. Like if I'm going to go give a presentation on a stage to 50,000 people, I'm going to probably be really upbeat and lifted and have just this huge charging energy. And then when I go into the dinner room and I've got a boardroom of 20 different billionaires in front of me, I am going to be like, I'm going to quiet myself up and listen and learn and study. So I'm not going to be all upbeat and trying to sell 50,000 people an energy and an idea. And so what you're saying is that you know your role. You come alive when you get to the point of being in the booth and doing your duty. And that's good, right? You don't have to always be, you're not the introvert when you're in the booth. You come alive because it's like this destined thing for you. It's like your superhero alter ego type of thing, right?
Yes. I that's perfectly explained, I think. And when you're doing announcing, it's like you said, you want your personality to come through, but you also need to understand the situation. Like when I'm doing a baseball game, there's 3 phases. There's the pregame, where you're doing like your pregame, like advertisement reads. You got your national anthem and or introducing a special guest, like especially if the special guest is military, you definitely want a more serious, like you definitely want the crowd to feel the emotion of what you're announcing and the seriousness of it. And then there's the game,
right? Which is
that's when you want to be your most excitable. Even if you're not feeling very exciting, you definitely are. That's your job, is to bring out the excitement into what is going on to the field. Yeah. So you got my advertisement read is definitely different from when I'm announcing a player to the box, or when I'm announcing a hometown hero in the middle of the game from the military. Yeah. It's definitely different ways to read in different aspects of the show.
Yeah. It's incredible. And I think your proof that this dispels the idea that you have to always be a certain way. No, you can have different forms of your own self that are applicable towards things that you do well, and that helps you thrive, right? I think that's sort of what I'm taking out of that, which is amazing. Yeah. Do you practice the now batting, and do you do that stuff like behind the scenes and at home when you're in your own zone and work on your bringing the batter to the box voice and attitude?
When I was first trying to figure out what I wanted my style to be,
okay,
yes, I tried out different ways on how I wanted to do it, but not so much anymore. once I figured out a way that works for me. Now, if the team that I'm working, because of course I work for more than one team than just the Braves. If the team that I'm working for wants me to do it a different way, if they say, "Have you ever tried announcing it this way or using this verbiage?" Then yes, absolutely. If it's something that I'm not familiar with, I haven't done a bunch. That's practicing in the shower. Some people sing in the shower. I announce in the shower.
There's nothing wrong with that, man. Ideas, my best ideas come in the shower. I'm like, I got to get this board down, and they make a note of this thing in the shower. It works. It works even for announcing.
But yes, to answer your question, yes, I practiced a bunch on my own.
That's amazing.
For sure.
That's amazing. So you mentioned coaching and suggesting. That's probably the better way to say it. See, even I make mistakes in what words I say, which I enjoy and I embrace. Bring it on. Let's make some mistakes. But so you're saying that different teams, or even in your own organization, you have people that come up to you as coaches or leaders and say, "Hey, what if we attempted to use a little bit more raise and voice there? What if we tried this?" Is that how that works if you need it, or how does that whole thing operate?
I've been lucky enough to where that hasn't happened too often. As a sports fan, and of all kinds of sports, indoor, outdoor sports, I know, just as going to games as a fan, generally what the atmosphere should be like. So I announced for a local hockey team for a few years.
Okay.
So when you're doing sports indoors, you definitely want to it's called arena announcing, a little bit more high pitch in your voice, holding out the team name a little bit longer, like Atlanta, for holding out Atlanta for a little bit longer than if you're doing like a Braves game or something, like where it's outdoors and it's a little bit more laid back. You still want to be excited when you bring the Braves onto the field,
right?
But maybe not quite as much, just a little bit less than if you're doing like a hockey or basketball or something that's indoors, where you can use your voice to fill the space. There's a finite space when you're in an arena. Whereas when you're doing a game outdoors, your voice escapes to the ethos.
Yep. That's a fantastic point of view.
When you have a finite amount of space to fill your voice, then you can fill it with a little bit more excitement than you do if you're doing a baseball game.
It's like reading the room. Reading the room. It's something I was taught in speaking whenever I would go still speak. It's like, understand where you're at, what this looks like, what's the setup. Same thing for you, and that's pretty neat. And your delivery of such reflects what the arena represents or the outdoor stadium represents. That's really cool. See, this is the stuff that I would never think of that you guys think of similarly. Okay, all right. So now let me ask you this. Do you go down and interact with the players to get to know them better, to understand them, so you have that more close-knit understanding of who they are and what they're about, so that makes you a better PA announcer? Is that part of your process? Are you privy to that? Is that not on the table? Like, how does all that work?
That would be cool, but no, you don't. You don't get to go down and hang out with the players. People ask me that all the time.
Really?
Like, you got access to the locker rooms? Like, no. I'm just like any other game day employee that the Braves employ, whether it be an announcer or a concession stand worker or a security guard or a janitor.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, unless the player reaches out specifically and wants to hang out with you.
Right.
Which is, I'm not holding my breath for that. But
sure.
Unless the player reaches out specifically, no, you don't get to hang out with the players. It'd be awesome, though.
But the TV crew does, though. Like, they get to go down there, right? Like, they live down there.
Well, TV crew is media, so that's a little bit different.
Okay.
If they're media, of course, then you get special permission to go hang out with the players. I'd like to sneak onto the TV crew one time, like just nothing to see here, just part of the TV crew, and then head to the locker room. But most people know my face nowadays, so I can get away with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So now I want to go there. So have you started to become a pseudo celebrity in Atlanta? and people walk and down the streets of Atlanta. Say, hey, Kevin, what's up, bud? I know you're the man. Like, I love you. Has that happened yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
That's which I'm, to be honest, I'm totally fine with. Now, because in my mind, it's not that I don't want to talk with the fans.
Right.
I absolutely would if someone would stop me and say, I really enjoy you and what you're doing. Keep up the good work. I really would like to enjoy the fans, but for this first season, maybe even the first 2 seasons, I'm really focused on having the fans get to know me through my voice. Absolutely. And then once we have a little bit more of a relationship with each other as a whole, then I'd be a little bit hurt if people didn't know me by sight. But I'm totally fine being an anonymity.
Yeah.
Anonymity?
Yeah.
Anonymity, right?
Anonymity.
But people, as so far, not yet. Unless people that I already know are at the game, then that's as far as like strangers, no one's.
Sure.
And that, on social media, yes, I had about the day that it was announced that I got the gig, I had about 150 new friend requests.
Oh, nice, man. Yeah.
on Facebook. So cool. That was a little bit different for me. That was something I never experienced before. But,
sure.
Out and about among the people, no, I'm still a regular old Joe.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, it's interesting times we live in now because you have a very leverageable situation in the world of creative and brand building, one can say. And I would think that you would, again, I'm not telling you to do this or not, I'm just making comments out loud, be able to leverage your seat into growing a brand that represents, the fact that you're the Atlanta Braves PA announcer. And that's like a big deal, right? And I think you could have some fun with that. I mean, that's my personal suggestion. Like, you can create these funny videos and use your voice and grow a really big, badass audience that would support what you're doing. Maybe even sell tickets, man. Then they got a whole bigger deal for you waiting down there in Atlanta.
Possibly one day. If my wife makes fun of me because I have Facebook, but I don't have Instagram. I don't have Twitter.
Wow.
I don't do TikTok. Nothing.
That's incredible.
But that's a good point though. It's like I mentioned, after 2 or 3 seasons, and after folks really start getting used to me as far as like being the voice at the stadium.
Sure.
There might be a time where I might have to have help. Maybe my wife can help me.
Yeah, of course, man.
Branching out into TikTok, branching out into ways I can reach more fans.
Absolutely.
That might be something I might explore in the future, but at least for this year, I'm just enjoying the Braves doing good things on the field.
Totally, man. That's the best success that you could have with what you're doing. Legitimately, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So, from the decision that they make to do and bring you in, is it a year-to-year type of thing? Is it a contract deal? Like, how does that business side of it work? Where they're like, hey, man, we like you. We're going to bring you in for 3 years and you're our guy. Or is it like, hey, you got to prove yourself this first year. And if you do good, then we're going to consider bringing you back. How does that conversation take place? Or like you said, I don't believe you're just another guy like all the others. I believe you're a fantastic human being that's doing amazing things. And
Thank you.
You have a lot of worth. And I feel like I'm doing some cool stuff in the world, and I'm looking at you. I'm like, you're doing some really kick-ass cool stuff in the world. Way cooler, man. Like, I would pay a lot of money to trade seats with you for a day just to be in that booth and see and experience and feel and have fun. But from their side, is it you're on a trial run right now, or are you secured for a certain amount of time? Like, I have no idea how that stuff works, which is, again, why I'm asking these crazy out-of-this-world questions type stuff. But I'm curious.
I actually don't know how much I'm allowed to say about this.
And by the way, if you can't, don't go anywhere. You're going to get in trouble. I'm not asking that at all. I'm just curious if, like, do they bring you in and you're allowed to, you're there for a year, and then it's like, well, if you can't go there, man, don't worry. We'll find some other fun stuff to talk about.
I think I can answer because my friend, the Braves organist, Matthew Kaminsky, puts this out on Twitter every year. Technically, they fire you every single offseason. Technically, on paper.
Wow.
Every single person, and it's not just me, every single person on the game day staff for the Braves, they technically, on paper, let you go, and then they rehire you.
Okay.
In February or March. I think it's for payroll purposes, and that's the only reason why I'm not exactly sure how much I'm allowed to say just because it's for payroll purposes.
Yeah.
But they're not, when they fire me in November, they're not going to go and look for a new PA announcer again. I'm pretty sure it's mine. They wouldn't go through the entire problem that they did in March and just to let me go after one season.
Sure.
It's my gig, but they do technically. I don't have the position after the season is over.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But they bring you back.
Understood.
So because Matthew Kaminsky, he jokes around every offseason on Twitter and says,
I got fired.
If they technically have to invite you back.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So
how long was the guy there before you?
That's kind of a sad story because that's how I got the job.
Yeah, I can read that.
That he passed away. Mm-hmm. He had it for 15 seasons.
Wow.
I believe. And I met him. His name is Casey. I met him my first year with Gwinnett, and the Gwinnett staff took a tour of Turner Field, where the Braves play at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I met him, and he made sure that we exchanged numbers, and we kept in touch, on a season-to-season basis after that. He made sure that the announcing on my end was going well. He offered pointers, and we just talked about life, too. I went to one game. I think we texted back and forth about what our favorite flavors of something was, flavors of candy or something.
Yeah.
To talk about anything but baseball while the baseball game's going on.
Right.
He was a great guy, and I actually learned a lot of my style from him directly.
I was just going to ask you that. I was just going to ask you. It probably inspired you some.
Yeah, and that was actually another goal of mine for this season in honor of him. I wanted, when people went to a game this year, I wanted people to be like, "Is that Casey on the microphone? Is that him?"
Mm-hmm.
Because he did such a great job for the Braves for so many years that I wanted to keep up the legacy of what he built going at Truist Park.
Yeah, what an incredible baton to carry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that gives it more purpose than just taking a job that obviously was already built for you because you're the born Atlanta Brave himself. Why? It's just kind of like that part was just a given. Now you add that extra layer to it. That's fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So, question around the times when you're not calling a game. I know we were texting back and forth, and you're like, "I got a homestand. I'm going crazy." It's like, "I got time off now." I say, "Braves are on a road trip." So what's happening? What's happening when they're on a road trip? Are you making moves and practicing and getting better? And like, do you take the craft part of that? Are you having meetings with the team, the game day team, all that stuff? Like, what is that behind the scenes when you're not actively, because 81, is it still 162 and 81 half? Is that how it goes still?
That's right.
Okay. Just make sure my numbers are still working. I'm still a sports guy, man. I just don't pay attention to it every day like I used to as I'm doing my own stuff.
It's totally fine. I generally don't hear much from the team while the team's on the road, which is fine with me. It's a long season, goes from late March now to October. So I'm quickly learning to, and I'm already used to it because the minor league schedule is not much shorter than major leagues. I think there's 140 minor league games with 70 home games. So I was already very much used to the schedule. And when you have a week road trip, when the team's on the road for a week, you quickly learn to cherish that time off. So that's when I get caught up on sleep. I get caught up on stuff to do around the house. And by the way, I still have a day job. I still go to work 40 hours a week during the day.
What?
So it's a little bit more time if things are falling behind a little bit at work, to get caught up on those tasks I need to get caught up on while the team's on the road.
Wow. So you're doing double duty.
Yeah. You get used to it after a while. It's like I said, you get just a little bit less sleep when there's a homestand going on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So man, you're a hustler too. So it's not just like, you're not just gifted in doing your duty. What are you doing as a part of a second job? Or I shouldn't say part.
I work as a supervisor for a data company. And that keeps me busy. I am in charge of about 10 to 12 people. So,
okay.
That keeps me plenty busy during the day. So there's definitely not a shortage of things to do. I wish the voice thing, because I do know some people that do the voice thing as a full-time job. They do voiceovers, and I do voiceovers too, but not to the extent that others have time for. So
Okay.
if you are extremely lucky enough to make the voice thing a full-time gig and you don't have to do anything else, I highly recommend doing that. But
Yeah.
I'm not nearly that lucky. I have to have full-time office job just like everyone else.
Kevin, I'll ask you my last question, and then like I said to you earlier, I'm going to wrap you into number 2 down the road when you have all this success and you're this big ass, badass Atlanta Braves celebrity because you've taken over the booth world. But my final question, in most cases and always, is what does always on the grow mean to you?
Don't take anything for granted. Don't get complacent. We've already talked about, continuing to work on little things that you can do better, even if not for yourself, for your clients, on who you work for, as far as like just for the announcing things go. Things change with the times, and as just like everything else, announcing can change too. Yeah. If something that you were doing, 5 years ago that may have worked then, you could probably, especially if it's 5 years ago, you probably do better. Yeah, so always be working on things that you can do to get perfect. And that's good because you're never going to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I love it.
Always try to be perfect because you're never going to be. And so that's always going to be something to work for.
Listen, man, you inspire me. I really love when somebody can sit across from me and acknowledge that they are X, but they do Y. And to do Y, because of being X, there's a difficulty in that, right? I understand that being an introvert, to get in front of or on a mic or in a booth is like the most terrifying thing in the world. But for the purpose of today's conversation, realizing that you have taken that head on and charged into it like a raging bull to be the best broadcaster for game day and in the booth there in the stadium, that's just really exciting to me. And I have a lot of admiration for people like that. It's obviously, in this case, specifically you. And I think that alone will inspire people to want to explore the other side of them, right? Where they're not so concerned that because they think they're X, they can't do Y. But let's go and try Y. And I think that you're a perfect testament to that, my man. So listen, I know you said you don't have any social media channels outside of what I can imagine you're probably going to want to share or promote besides coming to an Atlanta Braves game. Do you have anything that you want to relay to the audience or share or talk about or point people to?
No, not particularly. It's like I said, you can find me on Facebook if you really want to. I generally don't post much besides sports stuff, so you probably get very bored of me pretty quickly.
Not even.
If you wanna find me and introduce yourself, especially if you want to be an announcer.
Hey,
if I can share any tidbits of wisdom with you, I'll be happy to. But as far as any other social media goes, like I said, I'm a 70-year-old man.
Listen,
I got no TikTok, no Twitter, no Instagram, so I'm just a boring old guy.
But you have grit and resilience, man. You got a damn good profession, and you've done something that is against all odds. I believe, and like what you just said is like, if you want to be an announcer, like I puckered up, because even more than that, I think people will probably want to understand how you did it in the face of the adversity internally, assuming you're an introvert. And you went out and got to the extrovert position to make a life and a career out of something, which is what I think a lot of people need help with. It's something I talk about all the time, which is resistance, right? Getting past the resistance of what holds them back. So that's exciting. Hey, go find them. And damn, when we blow this brand up bigger than we're already doing it right now, there's going to be thousands of people flooding your inbox because they're going to want to know what it takes to follow the path of Kevin. And is it Kraus or Cross? I mean, it's Kraus, right? I would say it's Kraus.
I get that all the time. It is Kraus.
Kraus, yes, that's right. See, I just want to make sure, man. I don't want to butcher it and get all pissy with, because I know that might upset some people.
The biggest thing is spelling it wrong. People will spell it with 2 S's, even though it's clearly right there in front of their face is 1 S.
Sure. Yeah. Of course, man. Listen,
it is Kraus.
Kevin, God bless you, my man. You're an amazing human. I can feel it. I experienced it with you. I totally enjoyed having you a part of this show. I'm so grateful for you. Keep rocking. And once it cools down out here, we're going to have you in Vegas, man. We'll do the next one in studio, right? We talked about that.
I'm looking forward to it. And hey, the A's are coming, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
Definitely when the
Yes.
Braves face the A's in Vegas,
That's
I'll see what I can do to get out there for sure. So that's at the very latest, because I know it'll be another couple of years. But
can't wait, man.
When the Braves are out there, I'll definitely be out there.
All right, brother. God bless. Have a great Saturday, man. Enjoy your day. You're the man.
Thanks, Manny.
All right, Kevin. Bye-bye.